on energy. ready yet.
Brayden has amazed me. He's so strong.
You hear about cancer, but you don't ever think that.
All right, let's go over the gear. We have Umbrus on our helm, Stolen Vigor on our chest, Shared Misery on the gloves, Might aspect on our pants, Penitent Greaves, and Accelerating aspect on our crossbow. The only other recommendation I could make is to switch Stolen Vigor with Disobedience, which is on our amulet. And here's the amulet. The amulet is Disobedience, and we are using the Barber Wrathful Heart. Here, our next ring is Bursting Venoms, and we are using the Cluster Munitions Heart. And last but not least, Pestilent Points, very important. Pestilent Points, we are using the Revenge Heart for 20% damage reduction. Our dagger is a Shira's, and we have Blade Dancers on our other dagger. Really quickly, I'm going to go through the entire stat sheet here so you can see what all of our mods are. And now let's talk about the build and the skill rotation. So when we're doing Nightmare Dungeons and pretty much anything else, whenever you have your Poison Imbuement up and you don't have Bursting Venoms active, you're going to want to make sure you charge up at least 2 or 3 combo points before releasing it. What that's going to guarantee is that you're doing enough damage to kill in 1 or 2 shots essentially any elite that you encounter in a tier 100 dungeon. Also, for boss fights, you want to do the same thing. If you don't have access to unlimited poison imbuement, the most important thing is to make sure you're charging up to 3. But see, here you can see once a Bursting Venom procs, you can pretty much go wild with it. So that's how it works when you're fighting in a Nightmare 100 dungeon. You want to ensure that you're using a good rotation of your skills so that you can guarantee all your buffs are going to be active, such as Might, Momentum, and Stolen Vigor. For Lilith, we just take off Disobedience because we already have the maximum amount of armor that we need for the fight. So in place, we just put the Corruption aspect on. Also, if you have a Creeping Death Heart, it doesn't hurt for bosses. You can always put a Creeping Death Heart on instead of Barber when you're doing a boss fight, or if you just want to go with a little bit longer of a Barber Heart, then it can benefit you as well. Now, the extra critical damage from Barber doesn't really help your poison damage at all. So it really isn't helping all that much on the boss fight, so Creeping Death would be best. Now, you are so strong and tanky in this fight. You will see a number of times we're actually able to just completely tank all of Lilith's waves. We're able to go out of the ring if we need to at any point in time, because it is just that strong, and it is basically impossible to die unless you're getting hit with 3 one-shot mechanics all at the same time. When you're dealing damage, you want to pay careful attention. Now, this isn't the Lilith build that I posted the other time. You're going to have to play and make sure you are utilizing the most damage that you can possibly do. If you want to just one-shot Lilith and ignore all the mechanics, go watch the other build. We do 130 million DPS on the pure Lilith build, but this is a build that can do everything in the game. It's not going to be the best Lilith killer, but it's really good, and it's actually really safe, and I think for some people, this playstyle may actually be preferable than the other one where you're going to get one shot if you get hit. This is really nice because you can basically drag out the fight as long as you want. You can play it real safe. You can learn the mechanics this way as well. By not having such an unforgiving fight where if you take one hit, you're dead. Like, look at that. We just took the middle of the circle. Lilith stomped to the face like it was nothing. I mean, you basically, you can get a feel for the fight. You can play all the mechanics. No one can call you a cheeser for doing it this way. We are not using Fist of Fate, anything like that. You are just playing normal, a normal Twisting Blade damage dealer. Here we go outside of the ring to survive, to avoid that whole mechanic. So literally, like, you can do just about anything on this build. It is nearly impossible to die. When you do get a stagger off, they're not going to be as often, but you want to make sure you're maximizing your DPS when a stagger does get off. So here you can see it's all the same exact gear. We just put Corruption on. I'm using all the same skills as well. I haven't changed a single thing except I took off Disobedience. That is it. You don't even have to do that if you don't want to. This build can do it all. This is our Uber Lilith now, second phase. You can see we still build up the stagger pretty decently just with what we're using. And you can actually see here, we stagger Lilith down, the boils spawn, but guess what? We can tank multiple projectiles with this build. So really not worried all that much about the projectiles. You can see we almost did the entire life bar. Here we have the projectiles. I think we might even get hit by a few here, and it's no issue at all. You can see we can tank probably around 3 of these projectiles as well. I know a lot of you from the last Uber Lilith build were getting a little frustrated with these blood boils spawning, but with this build you really don't have to worry about them at all. You can see Lilith is already at the end of her life bar, so we are just letting her finish out her mechanics. If you didn't do enough damage in the first phase, make sure you're DPSing in the middle here. And now we get to the final part, and last but not least, I didn't notice, but she let off an echo and it does no damage at all. We could survive another 3 of those Echo of Lilith screams and the little Wolverine attack. Here you can see nothing changed at all. The build is extremely comfy for Uber Lilith. You can tank multiple hits. If you have Fist of Fate, put them on. I'm going to go over variant, like if you want to just do gear swaps, you don't have to change a single thing in the Paragon or the skills, but if you want to do gear swaps, it would be even better and even stronger than what I just showed you. I didn't change a single thing besides Disobedience. and it even works in PvP as well. So here you just like rogues basically own PvP, and right now there's maybe a bug, maybe a feature that poison damage is not being hit by the same PvP modifiers that physical damage is. So even the physical damage rogue is this poison variant is very, very strong in PvP. Now you're not going to be the best PvPer, but this is an all-in-one. If you want to focus on PvP, check out a specific PvP build. I'm going to go over what all those PvP gear aspects look like in a little bit. Now we're going to review the Paragon board real quickly. In our starter board, we're going to come in. We're going to make sure we grab 4 tiles in this Paragon board. Huge multipliers for poison damage, right? So you'll notice that even before buffs, you have 9100 armor, which is the maximum amount of armor that you need for Lilith and PvP. And then combined with Disobedience, we have enough basically defense to hit the maximum, or nearly the maximum, for tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons as well. So life is the key, max life is the key. We get to around, you'll probably get to 20k life in this build. I only had around 1900 because I didn't have one of my rings, but this build most likely will run 20k life. Here we run Devious to boost out all of these predictions. When we come into our exploit weakness board, this board has a ton of vulnerable damage. Vulnerable damage has no cap in PvP for damage over time. So PvP build, all vulnerable damage stacking as much as possible is actually going to help us. It's also great for life. We grab damage reduction, we grab armor, all that great stuff. Here we come up. This is already no witness board. Insane, and you don't need any additional nodes to hit this 25 intelligence because the knowledge gives you huge intelligence. Also, we're boosting the damage on this, which is a double additive damage for poison. So this is an insane 45% double additive damage boost just from this one build. I'm not using many Paragon points. Here we come over to the additional trade board. Here we're putting closer in. Closer cutthroat skill damage is a big damage boost for poison. So we have all of these up and above. 65 dexterity. Have a huge bonus to that multiple cutthroat skill damage from closer. Closer is also giving us some damage reduction as well. Then we come up to the stratagem board. So this is going to be the last board where we're hitting our requirements. Here you can see it's very important because force we want to make sure we have 540 intelligence to hit the bonus here. We also have enough strength for the lawless armor, and then here we're putting versatility. Versatility gives more damage boost for poison, and then we also are boosting up all of so we get a ton more core skill damage from here, and then we get a bunch more armor from this. So versatility goes in the here we have our cheap shot board. Go up to the top for some nice armor nodes. Then we go down to the bottom reduction from weights. We actually have enough dexterity on the build to also hit this round. We don't hit the intelligence. We get additional 6.5% damage reduction from weights. So really great just to grab real quick down there on the cheap shot. Not the best for Lilith, but it's still a multiplicative damage boost by 5% when she's stunned. So here we come up and we grab Turf for damage reduction. And we're just grabbing strength nodes up here to make sure we get that damage reduction bonus. And then last but not least, we come and grab Exploit. Our final board here is Deadly Ambush. And Exploit damage boost helpful just do a brief recap of the all-in-one build. Really, you don't need to change anything up from this to be able to do all three of those endgame fights and all those new Uber bosses that are coming with relative ease. So the only thing that I mentioned was that you could always swap Stolen Vigor for Disobedience if you're doing a little bit more PvP, but this is if you just want to do all the content fairly easily. This is your video that you're going to want to use. Now, if you want to get a little more into it and go with your swaps, now you don't have to change a single skill or character if you don't want to. Someone asked for one build that can do it all. If you want to just change it, I do this a little bit myself. This is the build that I'm going to run, and I have gear swaps. If I want to be a little bit more min-max. So here is a Lova swap that you can do. Now you can see that a lot of the aspects are the same, but here we add in Noxious Ice. We put in Manglers as well. We add back in Corruption, great aspect for the build. We change out one of the Cluster Jewels for Clip Shot if you want it, if you just want some additional stagger, and then Keeping Death we change from Barber if you so choose. The Barber's not all that helpful unless you have a really long one. And now if you want to min-max your PvP swap, and if you really want to compete at the higher levels, you are definitely going to want to focus on your PvP swap aspects. A lot of these are going to be different than what you're using for general farming, and this is just because these are the best PvP aspects and hearts that you can get. So here you can see Escape Artists, Exploiters, Eluding, Protecting, Ravagers. Those are all going to be different. Accelerating, we can keep the same. Stolen Vigor on your Amulet, which I had recommended earlier. If you do Stolen Vigor on your Amulet, it can serve two purposes. Assimilation on your ring. This is for a lot of dodge, which is very important. And then also the Corruption.
Greetings.
Aspect. So Corruption, we're going to add back in for PvP just so we can increase our damage.
Yes. Hello.
The rest, Blade Dancers and Ashiras
Yes.
are the same. We add in the Prudent Heart, so that is going to give us some immunity as well, and Creeping Death as our Malignant Heart. Now, when you're swapping to PvP, it's important to note that you're going to be at your max armor basically, so you really don't need to focus so much on the damage reduction on all of your gear. This is where I would say change your focus on your gear affixes to damage. Prioritize damage more than defense with PvP. The caps for PvP defense are relatively low, and with this build and this Paragon board, your defenses are all shored up. You really want to go all out on things like life and damage on your gear affixes specifically. And these aspects are really going to help you out. If you're still playing D4, if you're still loving it, leave a like on the video. Let me know in the comments, because there's a lot of us out there, and we're having fun with it. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope you like the build. See you in the next one.
At Kroger, everyone wins when it comes to savings because you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery as you do in store. So no matter how you shop, everyone saves big. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Hey folks, this is Riker, and today we'll be reacting to this video from the Comeback Kids, Gaming's Biggest Tragedy, The Rise and Fall of Diablo 4. This video's been getting some traction. I watched the first minute or so. It is exceptionally well produced. A lot of effort went into making this video. I know, as someone who edits videos, I can tell a lot of time was spent on this. Now, a quick note on my style of reaction video. I like to focus on being ethical and complying with fair use. So that means transformative. That means that this video is not going to be a watch party. This is my reactions, focusing on my reactions to what he is saying. So it's going to be mostly me talking, and I'm not showing his video in full. So if you would rather go watch his video first, I encourage you to do that. Link in the description. Otherwise, I encourage you to watch his video after this video.
On June 6th of 2023, Diablo 4 officially launched, and it was an instant home.
And if a tier 1
you're going to get basically 15% increased damage overall throughout the fight for another big damage boost. And you want combat here. This is going to give us additional energy restore cost. This one, the additional requirements are met, give us additional energy restore. And then we're also going to get a ton of extra critical strike damage here for our critical strikes. This board in its entirety, which again is in the description below, which is broken down with every single glyph you need. It's a quick reference guide. Make sure to check that out. Once you set this up this way, you're going to run through Uber Lilith entirely. For our specialization, you're going to be running combo points. This is the ideal one we want to run because it gives us the most amount of max damage that we can possibly have. And then we'll touch on our gear really quick. So as you can see, if you're trying to compare your attack power, when I move, my attack power goes down pretty decent, but we do have one of the aspects here bumping it up, so just keep that in mind when looking at this. Now this is a lot different from the tier 100 Nightmare build because it's specifically tailored to beat Uber Lilith. So first, the aspect we're going to use is the Mangler's aspect. This is going to make it so when hitting a vulnerable enemy, we have a big chance to daze them. Every time we basically hit this daze on Lilith, it's going to bump up her stagger bar again, getting her to the point where you can do the massive amount of damage that you want to do. Ranks of poison imbuement, cooldown reduction, and max life are good here, but I'm using most of this gear from my Nightmare dungeon build, so I'll talk about the main things you need and throw up the best things on the screen, and all of the updated stuff will be in the guide in the description. For our chest, you're basically going to want to have as much damage on here as possible. So poison damage, overall damage, cutthroat skill damage, and damage percentage are big ones that you can have, and you want the Exploiter's aspect on here, so that way for unstoppable enemies you deal 40% increased damage to them. This is a big damage bump that you definitely want. And then for your gloves, ideally you want a really good roll here for this aspect, but we want the aspect of Inner Calm, so that way when standing still we get 30% increased damage. Once Lilith is staggered, this is going to be a huge benefit to doing the max damage you can possibly do. You want critical strike chance, lucky hit chance, dexterity, and twisting blades here is perfectly fine for this roll. Then for our pants, we want the aspect of might. You don't have to have this, you can swap it out for some other aspect if you want, but I like it because it does give us overall damage reduction, and I wouldn't worry about getting max damage pants, but if you can get damage on your pants and those kind of affixes, make sure you do that. It's just going to add to your overall damage, but again, I'm just using my DR pants from my Nightmare build and it works perfectly fine. For our boots, we want the aspect of Noxious Ice. This is going to help dealing additional poison damage to frozen and chilled enemies. This is a big one to have. For our crossbow here, we want aspect of Corruption, so that our rebuke skill does increase potency against vulnerable enemies, drastically increasing our overall poison damage. And these are the ideal stats you'll want on your crossbow as well as your weapons if you can get them. You do want to get 2 daggers here, so you want the Ashira's Kanjar Ancestral Dagger for the additional attack speed that it gives and some of just the other stats as well as the lucky hit chance. You also want to make sure, again, stacking lucky hit chance as much as you can like on your gloves. For your other dagger, again, you want the same stats as the crossbow basically, but we're going to use the aspect of Bursting Venoms here, so that when we proc that pool, it basically gives us infinite restore on our poison imbuement. And then for our ring, we're going to be using the Blade Dancer's aspect for our twisting blades, again, just upping that damage, and the Wrathful Heart for increased poison damage or DOT damage over time. You can see on unstoppable enemies, also they're going to take 140% additional damage, which is huge. And for both rings, you want resource regeneration, lucky hit chance, vulnerable damage, and crit strike damage. And ideally for rings, the best stats here are lucky hit chance, vulnerable damage, crit strike chance, and crit strike damage for both rings. But you can see even with mine being pretty far off that, as long as you have lucky hit chance, you can still deal out a massive amount of damage normally. Then for our other ring, we want the aspect of Pestilent points, so every third cast of puncture gives you additional poison imbuement on your regular dagger for your normal puncture attack. This is a big one that you absolutely need. This is going to help us proc our Bursting Venoms for infinite poison imbuement all of the time. You have to run this imbuement now, otherwise this build just does not work and is not viable. And then for our amulet, we want the accelerating aspect on that, so we get increased attack speed for our overall attacks, allowing us to dish out a ton of more damage. And ideally here, I like +3 ranks of all imbuement skills for our poison imbuement, +3 ranks of the deadly venom passive for additional poison damage, dexterity percentage or overall damage percentage if you can get it, and then 40% imbuement skill damage or cutthroat skill damage is also good here too. Again, all of the best affixes will be in that guide. I'm just primarily going over the important aspects you'll need to make this build work 100%. The other 2 big important pieces that I would recommend you get, even if they're not very high level, and upgrading them, is your Penitent Greaves. This is going to allow us to do a decent amount of stagger damage to Lilith and basically chill her for additional stagger. And then our Fists of Fate deal a ton of stagger damage, so that way you basically can walk into the fight, have both of these on, and stagger her. Once her stagger bar gets kind of like 3/4 of the way full or almost full, you can then swap back to your regular gloves, and your regular boots with both aspects on them, and that way you can start dealing out the massive amount of damage and ramping up your poison damage since you're then about to stagger her. But these two items, the Fists of Fate and the Penitent Greaves, are very, very good for basically staggering her almost in like 15 or 20 seconds. In almost like 15 or 20 seconds, they're that good. So highly recommend if you get those, put those on at the start of the fight, and then when you're about to stagger her, switch over, ramp up your poison damage, and then just go to town easy. Then for our Paragon board, this is the setup we're going to be running. We're going to be running with the starter board. We're going to slot the Closer glyph here. This is going to give us Cutthroat skill damage, boosting our overall and poison damage basically for our twisting blades. And that additional Cutthroat damage once maxed out is going to be very important to add to our overall damage, and you do take 10% reduced damage once your additional bonuses are met. Just follow these boards and copy them exactly verbatim and you will have absolutely no problem. Next, we're going to take the Deadly Ambush board. With this board, you're going to get 23% increased critical strike damage for enemies affected by your trap skills, and you're going to get the Bane glyph here, and this is going to increase our overall poison damage. And another big thing is poisoning damage. Once you meet these actual requirements, or the additional ones, you get a 10% chance to double the amount of poison, which stacks on top of each other, giving us massive amounts of damage. Again, there's an engineering node here, and some other nodes. Again, just copy these exactly how I'm showing them to you. Then we're going to want this board right here. The next one is going to be Cheap Shot. And for the Cheap Shot board, you're going to want to socket the Efficacy glyph. Now, this is the glyph I just really like to use here because it gives us that imbuement skill effects have 20% increased potency, bumping up, again, our poison damage by quite a lot. Next, we want this board, which is the No Witnesses board. This board, we want to socket the Exploit glyph for vulnerable, but we also want to do it for the additional damage we get to vulnerable enemies, which we make Lilith all of the time. This is a huge multiplicative thing here, so we get an additional 43% vulnerable damage, greatly increasing our damage since she'll be vulnerable like every single second of the fight. And then next, we want to come over here and take the Cunning Stratagem board. And then here we're going to slot the Turf glyph so we get that additional damage to close enemies. This is going to be a big one, as well as 10% damage reduction again against close enemies. And then for our final board, we want the Exploit weakness board, and we're going to take this glyph so that way we can deal damage to a vulnerable enemy. You're going to get basically 15% increased damage overall throughout the fight, another big damage boost. And you want combat here. This is going to give us additional energy restore cost. This one, the additional requirements are met, give us additional energy restore. And then we're also going to get a ton of extra critical strike damage here for our critical strikes. This board in its entirety, which again is in the description below, which is broken down with every single glyph you need. It's a quick reference guide. Make sure to check that out. Once you set this up this way, you're going to run through Uber Lilith with no issues whatsoever. And ideally, the way the fight works, again, you want your Fists of Fate and your Penitent Greaves on so you can stagger her quickly. Once you start the fight, you want to hit Shadow Step and Poison Trap as much as you can to get the most amount of stagger on her over and over and over. You can use your Poison Imbuement immediately if you want. You just want to make sure you don't stagger her so quickly. You just want to make sure you don't go past that first bar before. For boots, we want the aspect of Noxious Ice. This is going to help dealing additional poison damage to frozen and chilled enemies. This is a big one to have. For our crossbow here, we want aspect of Corruption so that our imbuement skill does increase potency against vulnerable enemies, drastically increasing our overall poison damage. And these are the ideal stats you'll want on your crossbow as well as your weapons if you can get them. You do want to get two daggers here, so you want the Ashira's Kanjar Ancestral Dagger for the additional attack speed that it gives and some of just the other stats as well as the lucky hit chance. You also want to make sure, again, stacking lucky hit chance as much as you can like on your gloves. For your other dagger, again, you want the same stats as the crossbow, basically, but we're going to use the aspect of Bursting Venoms here, so that way we proc that pool that basically gives us infinite restore on our poison imbuement. And then for our ring, we're going to be using the Blade Dancer's aspect for our Twisting Blades, again, just upping that damage, and the Wrathful Heart for increased poison damage or DOT damage over time. And you can see on unstoppable enemies, bosses are going to take 140% additional damage, which is huge. And for both rings, you want resource regeneration, lucky hit chance, vulnerable damage, and crit strike damage. And ideally for rings, the best stats here are lucky hit chance, vulnerable damage, crit strike chance, and crit strike damage for both rings. But you can see even with mine being pretty far off that, as long as you have lucky hit chance, you can still deal out a massive amount of damage normally. Then for our other ring, we want the aspect of Pestilent points. So every third cast of Puncture gives you additional poison imbuement on your regular dagger for your normal puncture attack. This is a big one that you absolutely need. This is going to help us proc our Bursting Venoms for infinite poison imbuement all of the time. You have to run this imbuement now, otherwise this build just does not work and is not viable. And then for our amulet, we want the accelerating aspect. Have to run this imbuement now, otherwise this build just does not work and is not. Venoms for infinite poison imbuement all of the time. You have to run this imbuement now, otherwise this build just does not work and is not viable. And then for our amulet, we want the accelerating is not viable. And then for our amulet, we want the accelerating aspect on that, so we get increased attack speed for our overall attacks, allowing us to dish out a ton of more damage. And ideally here, I like +3 ranks of all imbuement skills for our poison imbuement, +3 ranks of the deadly venom passive for additional poison damage, dexterity percentage or overall damage percentage if you can get it, and then 40% imbuement skill damage or cutthroat skill damage is also good here too. Again, all of the best affixes will be in that guide. I'm just primarily going to the aspects we need to make this build work 100%. That's a big important piece of guys to get, even if they're not very high level, and upgrading them. And basically chill her stagger, and then anticipate a ton of stagger damage. So that way, you basically can walk into the fight, have both of these on the stagger, so the stagger bar gets kind of like 3/4 full. You can then swap that to your regular gloves and your regular boots with both aspects on them, and that way you can start doing aspects of damage and ramping up the poison damage since you're then about to stagger her with and effectively are very, very good for basically staggering her almost in like 15 or 20 seconds. Almost like 15 seconds for that good. So I highly recommend you get those, put those on the start of the fight. You're about to stagger her, switch over, ramp up the poison damage. Then for our paragon board, this is the setup we're going to be running. We're going to be running the starter board. We're going to slot the closer over here, which is going to give us poison skill damage, boosting our overall poison damage basically for our twisting blades. And that is going to cut through out. It's going to be very important to add to our overall damage, and you do take 10% damage once you're looking at that. Just follow these boards and copy them exactly verbatim, and you will have absolutely nothing. Next, we're going to take the deadly ambush board. With this board, you're going to get 22% strike damage, or in the effect of your gut skulls, and you're going to get the vein left here, and it's going to get overall poison damage. And remember, this thing is poison damage. Once you meet these actual requirements of the additional ones, you're going to have a chance to double the amount of poison, which stacks on top of each other with massive. Again, here, some other notes are going to I'm showing to you. Then we're going to want this board right here. The next one is the cheat shot. For the cheat shot board, we're going to want to socket the efficacy glyph. Now, this is the glyph I just really like to use here because it gives us that immunity skill effect to get rid of potency, bumping up again our poison. Next, we want this board. This board we want to socket the exploit glyph for vulnerable, but we also want to do it for the additional damage we get to enemy, which will make it work all the time. You can use it over vulnerable damage and then next we want to come over here and take the strategy board, and then here we can stop the turf clip so we get that additional damage. And then for our final board, we want the expert board. We're going to take this clip, you're going to get basically 50% damage overall throughout the fight, and you want combat here. This is going to give us additional energy restore cost, or an additional requirement. It's going to give us additional energy restore, and we're also going to get a ton of extra critical strike damage here. Strike. In the description below, which is broken down with every single good you need. It's a quick reference guide, just to check that out. Once you set this up this way, where the fight works again, you want to anticipate and attempt to freeze on so you can stagger her quickly. Once you start the fight, you want to take shadow steps and poison traps as much as you can to get the most amount of stagger over. Include your poison and bleeding if you want. You just want to make sure you don't stagger her quickly. You want to make sure you don't have that first barb stagger her because you're going to the second phase. Now once you get started getting staggered, you're going to switch back to your regular gloves and boots. You're going to basically go with the puncher or your poison blade. Until you can proc poison unit non-stop, use that poison unit proc non-stop, expanding your poison unit file blade, and just maxing out the amount of poison you can use. It's never ending. I'm not having to do a lot of equipment, I'm not built for overall damage, but I'm still able to do easily 50 damage, and even with the gear that I have, which isn't even close to perfect, it's not even really necessarily good the damage if it's going to happen here, because it was built for Nightmare Dungeon. That being said, thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you've taken that Uber already in the description below. If not, you just go and good luck, guys.
Here's one thing you need to do before you buy anything online. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this first. Are you worried that you aren't getting the best deals when shopping online? Tired of searching for coupon codes just for them not to work? What if I told you that there was a guaranteed way of knowing you can get the best deals and codes automatically applied at checkout in all your favorite stores like Amazon and Target? Don't believe me? Keep watching. Over 10 million people just like you have saved more than
Side quests are what most Diablo 4 players do just to get their renown and earn Paragon points. In light of this, they look for short and simple ones to complete. But what if I told you there's a chain of side quests that will not only earn you renown, but also reward you with an item that will make it well worth your time? Well, there is. There's a side quest in Hawazar called A Question of Self. It requires you to play through Act 4 of the campaign, which is where you fight Andariel from Diablo 2. Spoiler alert, I guess. Maybe I should have said that first. This will start a chain of side quests containing A Question of Self, Past Regrets, a series of steps, and Tace's final sword. This quest chain is not only one of the most enjoyable to play through in the game, but also one of the most rewarding. At the end of the chain, you'll receive a total of 80 renown for all of the quests, but most importantly, you'll get a really special amulet that some of you might have overlooked if you already have done this quest. Tesa rewards you with Mark of the Conclave, which is basically a unique amulet disguised as a rare. Many people will only see the 3 abilities that spawn on this amulet and probably chuck it on the ground. And that might also be the case with the other items that are like this in the game. In fact, in 20 places scattered throughout the map, you'll find unique monsters that drop these rare items that always spawn with the same abilities. You'll know that they're special because each one of them has a quote on them, much like uniques do. But since these items are rare, you can not only re-roll their abilities at the occultist, but you can also put aspects on them. Most of the items you find like this in the overworld are useless and far less powerful than other rares that you can find. But Mark of the Conclave is a very special item. At first glance, it might not look like anything special. However, it spawns with life on it. This is an attribute that cannot normally spawn on an amulet, and the other stats are directly tied to your class. The power level of those stats are tied to your character level, so it's most beneficial to do this at the highest level possible. I completed this quest on my Necro at level 83 for the purpose of this video, and I regret doing it so low, but I took one for the team so that you guys know how powerful this quest is. The crucial power level that you're looking for is to be above 725. It's a very crucial breakpoint for item levels in the game. So again, do this at the highest level possible. Someone on stream shared the amulet that their rogue got from completing this quest, and this amulet is fucking nuts. Not only can life not spawn on an amulet, but this roll cannot spawn this high on any item in the game. This is practically like 2 abilities in one, and may I add, the best ability that you can find on just about any item. When you realize that most classes only want a couple of abilities on their amulet anyway, and that you can re-roll these abilities to be whatever you desire, this might actually make this quest item one of the best items in Diablo 4, and it's even tradable. Time to update those max roll builds, boys. I don't even think they allow you to put this amulet in there in their T4 planner yet. Something tells me that that'll probably change real soon. Anyways, enjoy the quest. I'm not sure exactly what abilities spawn for all classes, but be sure to let me know down below.
Hello everyone, it's Gladius. I wanted to make a quick video about codexes, aspects, and how we can apply legendary aspects to other gear and pass that on to our new items.
Yeah, but it's not really important that we understand the system, but we need to understand when to use it, how to avoid some major pitfalls that would end up setting your character.
As an example, I wanted to take a look at a particular aspect that I found on the Barbarian. I'm doing a Hammer of the Ages build, and this right here is a pivotal aspect that I need to use for my build. Notice right here, the item actually rolled the highest possible value on the legendary affix, though the item itself is not that great. What I want to do is to be able to
Impressive.
take this aspect and put it on another item. Let's talk about the occultist and how the occultist can help you apply these to your gear. So if you're in Koyobashad, head on over to Demian, the occultist. We step on over here and open up the imprint aspect menu. We see that we get a couple options here. First, we're going to have an item that we can put up here. This is the item we want to inherit the legendary affixes. We get a couple options below it where it's Codex of Power and Aspect from Inventory. First, let's talk about Codex. Codex is basically the lowest possible value rolled on an affix. Now you might be wondering, why would I want to apply the lowest possible value? Well, what's great about this is that we're able to get these as guaranteed rewards by running certain dungeons. This aspect of Ancestral Force I was able to get from running the Sunken
nodes again, just copy this exactly how I'm showing them to you. Then we're going to want this board right here.